Hey guys, and welcome back. In today's video, going to be doing a 2020 presidential election hypothetical matchup between Democrat Elizabeth Warren and Republican Donald Trump, and how the Electoral College map might play itself out in this scenario. If you're interested in getting more political forecasting, analysis, and commentary, you can click that subscribe button, and be sure to check out all of our prediction and analysis matchup videos over on our YouTube channel. So heading into this one, at the start, we're going to be giving the no-brainer blue states over to Warren, and then doing the same on Donald Trump's side with the ones that the red states he was able to grab by significant margins there back in the 2016 general election against Hillary Clinton. And then we're going to go through and dole out the more competitive states and giving our reasoning on why we feel like they would either go to the Democrats or Republican side. So as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, a little bit of point of reference here. In the upper right-hand corner, our most important point of reference is going to be the 2016 presidential election map, where the blue states are Hillary Clinton, the red states and the dark red states are Donald Trump's, with the dark red states being ones that he flipped over that Obama was able to get back in 2012, where he was able to bring them over to the Republican side in 2016. Below that, we have the 2016 Democratic primary map, where green states are ones where Bernie did well, gold and yellow states being ones where Clinton did well. And then below that, we have the 2016 Republican primary results, where blue states are the ones that Donald Trump was able to take. And this is going to help us in a few states along the way, especially in how we're doling out some of these Midwestern states in particular, which were very competitive in a lot of these states back during the 2016 presidential election. But just to start off, talking about the favorability numbers of both of these two candidates, it's a situation where Elizabeth Warren doesn't have that name recognition, which is definitely going to potentially hurt her, but her favorability numbers usually hover around the mid-30s, with her unfavorable numbers maybe about 5 or so points below that, in the lower 30s, upper 20s range, in comparison over to Donald Trump, who's typically polling above Warren in terms of total favorability, usually in the upper 30s to lower 40s range. But the downside on Trump is he has massively higher unfavorable numbers in comparison to Warren, usually about 15 to 20 points higher on the unfavorable side than the Democratic candidate in this hypothetical matchup. So Trump, obviously having that name recognition, pretty much everyone across the political spectrum has either a favorable or unfavorable view of him, in comparison to Warren, who doesn't have quite that name recognition. So in these favorability polls, usually about a third of the people that are polled don't have an opinion of her. So that's something that would obviously change as we worked our way up to a hypothetical 2020 presidential election matchup, and it would be interesting to see how those numbers would play itself out at the end of the day. So moving on here, we feel like Warren probably does better than Clinton, especially in a lot of these key battleground states, because she has those progressive values that are pretty much identical to Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders, being the most popular politician in the United States, would definitely be out there on the trail campaigning and trying to get Warren elected, even more so than what he was doing for Hillary Clinton. And that also would help Warren in the fact that she would get a lot more enthusiasm and support from the progressive base of the Democratic Party, but also progressive independent voters as well, which didn't necessarily turn out all that well for Clinton, especially in a lot of these battleground states. But we still feel like this would be a highly competitive race, much more competitive than a hypothetical matchup between Sanders and Trump, where we had Bernie Sanders winning by a rather significant margin. And a lot of that is name recognition primarily. So starting off here, guys, going to be giving out the blue states that would be safe for Elizabeth Warren, and that would be Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington. We'll leave Nevada because it was pretty close, then going on to New Mexico. Colorado, we'll leave Minnesota as well because that was a pretty close one. And then Illinois, Virginia, District of Columbia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, and then we'll also leave New Hampshire and Maine because they were also pretty competitive between Clinton and Trump. Now moving on to the safe states for Donald Trump, and although a lot of these states, pretty much all of them, we would see as being more competitive between Warren and Trump than what we had between Clinton and Trump, we still feel like these are going to be pretty safe states, and they're generally Republican states at the end of the day as well. So those are going to be Alaska, Idaho, Utah, Montana, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And then the rest of these states, typically more battleground type states, are ones that were within about 10 percentage points or less, or having demographics that are shifting in a certain way where we feel like it's at least worth talking about the rest of the states that are on this map and how they might play itself out. So we're going to be working our way over from the west to the east, and then our last area is going to be talking in the Midwest, because we feel like that's probably where this election is decided. So starting off here, Nevada, a state that's having shifting demographics. They went for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump by a slight margin there, about 2.5 percentage points. We feel like a candidate like Warren would probably do even better in a state like Nevada, who's definitely got a good progressive voting bloc there. So definitely see her being able to continue to pick up a state that has shifting demographics. Now moving down to Arizona, and as you can see in the southwest of the United States, these states have been continuing shifting more to a Democratic side. States like Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico. Arizona does feel like the next hat to drop for the Democrats in their favor at some point, whether that's 2020 or 2024 or maybe even 2028. At one point, it does feel like the demographics are going to shift enough to where Arizona's probably going to be becoming more of a safer Democratic seat at the end of the day, but still a very competitive place right now. As we can see, Hillary Clinton losing to Donald Trump by just about 3.5 percentage points. We feel like Warren would be able to make this extremely close, but at the end of the day, we feel like Warren's name recognition, especially in this part of the country in particular, out west, probably enough at the end of the day for Trump to be able to get over the line. But this is one of those 50-50 states that I had a really hard time making a case on either side of things. And the fact that Trump was able to win it in 2016 will give him the benefit of the doubt in this go-around against Elizabeth Warren. Moving on to Texas, another state here down in the southwest area that's shifting more and becoming a bit more Democratic as the years go on, with those demographics shifting, becoming more Hispanic over time. And Texas is another one of those states that's probably going to become blue within the next decade or so. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer than that. Texas has a bit more conservative roots than maybe some of these other southwestern states, but still nonetheless a state where Hillary Clinton only lost to Donald Trump by 9 percentage points. We feel like Warren could make it maybe even closer than that, but still at the end of the day going to be giving the state of Texas over to Donald Trump. Moving on here to the state of Missouri, and that's a state where you can get Democrats or Republicans to win statewide elections. We see it all the time, but Donald Trump absolutely dominated Clinton, and Clinton's politics just did not play well in a state like Missouri. We can see Trump winning that one by almost 19 percentage points. And we feel, again, like Elizabeth Warren would definitely be the kind of Democratic candidate that could do much better in especially a Midwestern state like Missouri. But Donald Trump, probably a big enough cushion here that he was able to build in 2016 to where he keeps that state in 2020. And now we're going to move down to the southeast here. In Georgia, a state that was much more competitive between Clinton and Trump than the other southeastern states. And Georgia is probably, in terms of the Democrats' chances, their best ability to maybe pick up a state for a statewide election. And even though Trump was able to win this one by 5 points, we see Elizabeth Warren probably closing that gap a little bit, but still nonetheless, Clinton had a lot of African-American support, especially in the Southeast, and Warren maybe doesn't necessarily have quite the name recognition down here in the southeastern portion of the country, just like a Bernie Sanders, who really did not do very well back in the 2016 primaries. So as a result, we're still going to be giving Georgia over to Donald Trump as well. Moving on down to Florida, always one of the toughest states to predict. Barack Obama was able to win Florida in 2008 and 2012. Trump able to flip the state over in 2016 to the Republicans' side, just barely. We look at the numbers here. By about 1.5 percentage points, he was able to claim the state. And basically any presidential election, it seems like it's a 50-50 scenario. The fact that Donald Trump is the incumbent, he's got that name recognition, and he did pretty well in the state of Florida, actually much better than most were expecting him to do back in the 2016 primary. We feel like that's probably enough at the end of the day where he would just be able to get over the hump and get past Elizabeth Warren, who would still probably not have overwhelming name recognition, especially down here in the southeastern portion of the United States. Moving on up, we'll touch on the Northeast here for a minute. We have New Hampshire and Maine, both states that ended up going for Hillary Clinton at the end of the day. And we think Warren would probably absolutely demolish Trump in these states. She's from the Northeast state. Massachusetts, probably a lot of crossover vote there. and a section of the country where her type of politics are very popular. So kind of no-brainers in our mind, the fact that she'd be able to pick up New Hampshire and Maine. So moving on, we'll go to North Carolina next. Another very competitive state. Back in the 2016 election, Trump was able to win it by about 3.5 percentage points. This is a state that Obama showed that he could be very competitive in. I believe he won it in 2008, but fell short in 2012. And then the Republicans continuing to claim it here. But one of those states, again, it's kind of been a situation where the Democrats, they've more so been able to pick up Virginia consistently, and that's kind of spilling over a little bit here down to North Carolina as well, but a little bit tougher for them to pick up a state like North Carolina than Virginia. A state like North Carolina, maybe a little bit more awareness of a candidate like Elizabeth Warren, and I feel like Bernie Sanders would probably win North Carolina over Donald Trump, but still Donald Trump was able to win that state in 2016, and even though we have it basically as a coin flip, still we're going to give the benefit of the doubt here to Donald Trump that he would be able to pick up North Carolina, which is a state that is still slightly leaning more Republican at this point in time. And now at this point, we have Elizabeth Warren at 223, Donald Trump at 224, and now we're going to work our way through the Midwest, which is where this election is going to be decided. So starting off here, we'll go and start with Iowa first. So this is a state where Barack Obama was able to win in 2008 and 2012. Clinton's message did not resonate here, and not a big surprise, basically across the Midwest. Other than the state of Illinois, Clinton's message did not resonate very well. We feel like this is a big area of advantage for Elizabeth Warren in comparison to a candidate like Clinton, and also her ties to Bernie Sanders are going to be a big boost for her in this part of the country as well. But looking at Donald Trump's numbers, winning by almost 10 percentage points, he actually won by a larger margin in Iowa than what he did in Texas, which is pretty crazy to think about. And we feel like Donald Trump, the incumbent, the name recognition, and enough of a margin here of victory in a state like Iowa, where still at the end of the day, we'd feel like he'd be able to claim Iowa. Moving on up to Minnesota. And Minnesota did not like either of these candidates at all. And you can look at that back here in the primary results for 2016. Bernie Sanders doing very well in Minnesota in comparison to Clinton. And then you look at Donald Trump losing to Marco Rubio and not getting much of the vote in a state like Minnesota at all. So I think that that definitely is a clear sign that Elizabeth Warren would do extremely well in Minnesota. The fact that it's a Bernie Sanders state and a state that did not like Donald Trump at all and still went for Clinton at the end of the day. So that's kind of a no-brainer there. Moving on down here to Indiana, the Mike Pence factor is definitely a big plus for Donald Trump, and feel like at the end of the day, that also is just kind of a clear-cut win for him in a state like Indiana, which is tending to be a bit more conservative of a state in comparison to some of these other Midwestern states. Moving on to Ohio, a state that Obama was able to pick up in 2008 and 2012, and then, of course, Donald Trump flipping the state and winning it by 8 percentage points over Hillary Clinton, which is a pretty convincing win and a great result for a Republican in Ohio. It does seem like Ohio is becoming a little bit more conservative as the years go on right now. And Hillary Clinton, of course, just a really bad candidate whose message does not resonate in a state like Ohio. We feel like Elizabeth Warren makes this state extremely close, especially with that Bernie Sanders factor, and probably almost a coin flip at the end of the day, but Donald Trump getting an 8 percentage point lead there is probably enough for him at the end of the day with that name recognition and his loyal support in a state like Ohio to pick it up and keep it on his side. Moving on to the 3 states that basically decided the last election, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, usually very consistently blue states across these statewide elections, and states that went for Obama in 2008 and 2012, but Trump able to flip these states in 2016. We'll look at the results here. 0.7 percentage point win over Clinton in Pennsylvania. Michigan, just a 0.3% margin there. And then Wisconsin, a 0.7% margin there. So just ridiculously close in each of these states, less than 1% in each scenario. And that's with a very unpopular candidate like Hillary Clinton running on the Democrat side. They were still almost able to pick up these states. And Donald Trump, good on him for being able to flip these states over. He had his campaigns, of course. He was very protectionist, anti-free trade, which plays very well in this part of the country. But also Elizabeth Warren right there, and with that populist message, would definitely help her case out in comparison to a candidate like a Hillary Clinton. So starting off, I feel like Michigan very much so would probably go to Elizabeth Warren. Generally a pretty safe blue state. It takes a certain kind of bad Democratic candidate, especially in a presidential election, to lose. And we feel like Warren would definitely have that Bernie Sanders factor, where Sanders shocked everyone winning the primary in the state of Michigan. And Wisconsin as well, you can see back in the primary map, a state that Donald Trump lost to Ted Cruz in, and Bernie Sanders did very well against Hillary Clinton on the Democrat side. So that's just kind of a double whammy there, where we feel like Elizabeth Warren is kind of the clear-cut winner here in Wisconsin. So that puts us at 259 to 259. Wow, I did not expect it to be this close when I was going through seeing how this map might play out. But the final state here, Pennsylvania, again, one that Trump was able to just get over the line and beat Hillary Clinton, one that's usually a consistent blue state. It takes a really bad Democratic candidate to lose a state like this, and Hillary Clinton was that bad candidate. We feel like Elizabeth Warren, again, with those Bernie Sanders ties, those progressive populist stances on a lot of the issues, helps her enough and gets her over the line in the Midwest, with Pennsylvania going to her side of things. So at the end of the day, we have Elizabeth Warren at 279, Trump at 259. Maybe a little bit more lenient with some of these results, giving them over to Trump than maybe they would end up being at the end of the day. But still, when you're going and looking at the historical data and the fact that he is the incumbent, he has that name recognition, we feel a little bit better going over and giving him a lot of these results, especially with Warren not necessarily having that same kind of name recognition. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. Again, for more analysis and predictions, you can click that subscribe button. Be sure to check out all of our matchup prediction videos over on our YouTube channel. Thanks for stopping on in, and we hope to see you guys back here for future videos. Bye.